So it's been a fairly mental start to the summer break now, hasn't it? We've had all the Piastri drama, some dickhead decided to fake his death on Twitter just to stand next to a Formula 1 car, and Donald Trump decided to take the nuclear codes home from the White House as if it was the class pet. And while it's all been pretty crazy, I still want to milk some views off the whole McLaren situation, just because we are so close to 50k subs now. Anyway, you've obviously got the Piastri and Palou dramas swamping the headlines, but on closer inspection, McLaren's shady contract tactics go a lot deeper and affect much more people than that. Allow me to explain. Now, let's be honest, there are about 50 trillion videos on the whole Piastri thing at this point, so if by some miracle you still don't know what's quite going on, allow me to explain it in the quickest way possible. Alonso pisses off to Aston Martin, Alpine want Piastri to replace him. Piastri tell Alpine to f*** off and signs with McLaren provided they can move Ricciardo on. Alpine are still salty as f***, and so are going to court. Capiche? Capiche. Anyway, the whole palaver raises a lot of questions about McLaren's tactics. Now, yes, this is Formula 1 and no one has ever really missed a nice guy, but McLaren's treatment of its drivers hasn't been fantastic to say the least. Let's first talk about Daniel Ricciardo, whose situation I covered in a little more detail the other week. Now, though he likely would have known this was coming long before we did, it still must hurt seeing the team support and pledge commitment to you in the public, while at the same time negotiating a deal with Piastri behind the scenes. I've seen a few people claiming that when Ricciardo put out a statement on Instagram around the French Grand Prix, there wasn't a similar response by the team. Though that's not necessarily true. Team principal Andreas Seidel was quoted by Autosport saying the following:
"From our point of view, there was never any speculation required. We've been clear from our side that we have a contract in place, and our sole focus is together with Daniel on finding the last percentages in terms of performance. That is what we are focusing on. The statement wasn't a surprise, it was just confirming where we both are together, which is in line with what we've said for several months. So, no surprises."
Well, apparently apart from this one. Now, while it should be said that Seidel won't be the one making the final decision on Ricciardo's future, that will obviously be the Zachmeister here, his relationship with Piastri's manager Mark Webber from their time at Porsche is allegedly how Oscar got his foot in the door at Woking in the first place. I'd also be shocked if at the time the Autosport article was posted, only 4 days before this whole show kicked off, Seidel wouldn't be aware of what was going on in the background. Of course we don't, and likely never will know the full story here. But this isn't the first time McLaren have been caught making false promises to its drivers. We'll get to that later on in the video. The thing is, this has certainly split the overall McLaren fanbase. The once devoted group during the Carlos and Lando era were incredibly excited with the prospect of Ricciardo entering the team, and the subsequent chaos that would create. Though that hasn't really come to pass, and the fanbase has slowly seemed to diverge into Team Lando versus Team Daniel. These two groups once lived in harmony. Well, relative to the rest of F1 Twitter anyway. Until Piastri happened, that is. And Team Daniel, funnily enough, weren't particularly happy about it. McLaren's PR team haven't helped matters much either. Staying silent is one thing, but making tone-deaf posts like this while everyone wants to know what's really going on won't help the situation at all. But perhaps McLaren are just learning from what happened the last time they tried this stunt, only a few weeks ago. Again, I've covered the Alex Palou situation in more detail in a separate video. But here it is for those that didn't catch that. Palou, the reigning IndyCar Series champion, was confirmed by his Ganassi team to be staying on for the 2023 season. Hours later though, Palou would respond claiming Ganassi was chatting even making up fake quotes from the Spanish driver. Moments later, it was announced that Palou had been signed by McLaren, which is a very important point and we'll come back to it later. But this all sounds rather familiar, doesn't it? Some sources are claiming that Zach Brown only went through with this move due to his poor relationship with Palou's current boss, Chip Ganassi, or the Kingpin lookalike as I like to call him. Nicknames and the battle of the American fat men aside, while initially all the hate was offloaded onto Ganassi, McLaren doing this all over again a few weeks later has caused some raised eyebrows among fans and F1 Twitter. Though their opinions don't matter, let's be honest. But this isn't McLaren's only drama in IndyCar, as a whole other chapter seems to have slipped under the carpet unnoticed. What happens now for Felix Rosenqvist? McLaren will expand to 3 cars for the 2023 IndyCar season. Problem is, they have 4 drivers. Now, I might be an engineering graduate, but you can also see how that math doesn't work, right? Current star Pato O'Ward and new signing Alex Rossi are definitely staying in Indy next year, leaving the 3rd seat between Alex Palou and Felix Rosenqvist, who, like the Spaniard, only signed with McLaren, not specifically their IndyCar team. That was done back in June, long before McLaren announced Palou's appointment. However, it now seems that the only reason they did this was so they have a fallback option if Ganassi can keep hold of their star driver in the courts. If Woking do get Palou's services, Rosenqvist will get sent back to Formula E, which he has outright stated he doesn't really want to do. And hey, who could blame him? But in that case, why sign the contract to begin with? Well, it appears Felix was under the impression he would most likely stay in Indycar, which is again a bit shady from McLaren if the plan was to poach Palou all along. At the end of the day, it just seems like McLaren have taken the approach of, if we sign every driver, there'll be no one left for the other teams to pick. But that begs the question, how are they getting away with this? Racing drivers can, funnily enough, count. So why sign with a team knowing that you might just be left in the mud? Or Formula E, though that's practically the same thing at this point. Well, it's the appeal of Formula 1. Another of McLaren's IndyCar drivers, Pato O'Ward, broke the silence on his contract earlier this week. From what he claims, every driver that signs with McLaren is being lured by the false promise of a seat in Formula 1. With Ricciardo struggling, questions were being asked, even at the end of last year, whether O'Ward would be the successor at Woking, especially after the Mexican took part in the young driver test in Abu Dhabi. Then Colton Herta was given time in an F1 car, and focus shifted onto him now the Andretti F1 entry has died in the water. And after that, it was Jehan Daruvala. Okay, fine, no one really expected that one to go very far. But then the Palou case happened, and his signing to just the McLaren group made us all wonder if he could be destined for that F1 seat, only for McLaren to screw over everyone and sign someone completely different in Piastri. You can tell this hasn't pleased many of the other supposed candidates, especially O'Ward, who I must admit has taken a bit of a risk outing his team in the way that he has, especially since they now have an encyclopedia of drivers to replace him if they want to. Though I doubt this will happen, I just can't get the bad taste out of my mouth here. While McLaren haven't broken any major rules per se, their overall shady tactics and false driver promises don't paint them in the best of lights amongst the public. And that's kind of an important thing in this day and age of motorsport. And the sad thing is, it's nothing new at all. We've got to remember that before the days of Lando and Carlos, this was the same team that paid its staff in 50p Freddo bars for their overtime at the factory. The internal environment under Zach Brown isn't necessarily as rosy as we all might want to think. That's my thoughts though, and now it's over to you guys in the comments. Has your opinion on McLaren changed at all in recent weeks? Let me know down below, and I'll try and join in on the conversation as per usual. If you ended up enjoying the video, be sure to drop it a like, and get subscribed if you haven't already. We are so close now to 50,000 subscribers, so if you're enjoying the content, help me out by clicking on that big red button. Finally, a massive thank you to all my patrons for supporting the work I do, and if you want to get involved in that regard, or just check out any of my other socials, the link to that can be found down in the description and pinned comment of this video. Anyway, that's all from me. I'll see you soon with another video, but until then, have a good one.